Welcome, folks, to episode 93 of the Lessons from the Cockpit Show. And we've got a great one for you today. This is the first time I've done an interview like this, so this is going to be really interesting. But I've wanted to interview this individual for a long time. I am the host of the Lessons from the Cockpit Show, retired Lieutenant Colonel Mark Hasara, KC-135 pilot, passing gas all over the world, and loved every minute of it. On the Lessons from the Cockpit Show, we interview some of the most fascinating and intriguing pilots, aircrew members, maintainers, and aviation enthusiasts from all over the world. We want to hear their stories, but more importantly, what did they learn during those extreme and extraordinary military, commercial, and even private aviation environments? Our purpose is to show how does the aviation world work, but more importantly, increase critical thinking skills both in the air and on the ground. But folks, one of the things that I love doing is recording people's legacy. And we're going to hear a lot about legacy today. And a lot of these stories you're going to hear for the very first time. This episode of the Lessons from the Cockpit Show is brought to you by Wall Pilot, custom aviation art for the walls of your home, office, or hangar. You see the 4-foot KC-135 on my wall behind me. That was my airplane when we were living in Okinawa, Japan, stationed with the 909th Air Refueling Squadron, tail number 8874. These are 4, 6, and 8-foot long graphics printed on vinyl you can peel off and stick to any wall or flat surface. And yes, we have found out they are waterproof and dishwasher proof too. So go by Wall Pilot and pick out one or two of our 154 ready to print, or we'll do a custom one for you. If there's a particular airplane that you absolutely love, wants your name on it from a particular squadron with a particular weapons load, we can go all the way back to World War II up to modern jets. Working on World War I, helicopters are killing me because of the rotor hubs, but we can do it. Go to wallpilot.com and order some of these. Folks, on today's show, I'm interviewing the very first aviation artist I've ever interviewed. And we've been connected for a number of years through LinkedIn and other things, but we've never met like retina to retina, as they say. And so on today's show, I'm interviewing the great aviation artist, Wade Meyers. So grab an adult beverage of your choice, sit down, strap in, and let's begin the Lessons from the Cockpit Show with an interview with aviation artist Wade Meyers. And he's going to tell us some great stories, folks. You're going to love hearing these. Wade Meyers.
Hey, Mark.
You and I have known each other a few minutes, huh? And this
Yeah,
is the
a
first time
couple.
we've ever met face to face, though.
This is it. Yeah.
Welcome to
I
the
love, I
Lessons
love,
from the
look,
Cockpit Show,
thank you. I
man.
love your podcast. I love your podcast. I was looking through the list of your guests and I'm going, why did he invite me? Uh, all these, I was listening to, the last one I listened to was Donk, the A-10
Oh, yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
I was sitting there trying to paint and, tears were coming down my eyes.
Oh, I know.
He had a
There's
couple
a
of,
bunch of them.
he had a couple stories that were pretty powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh I've enjoyed doing this because I get to meet people like you face to face.
Yeah.
And like I said, you and I have been connected via LinkedIn and passing messages back and forth and everything. But this is the first time we've ever been, like we say, retina to retina,
That's right. Yeah.
And I wanted to have you on because, brother, you are a world-class artist
Thank you.
and you have a very unique story. And we're going to get into that right now. So the first question I ask all of my guests is, how did you become interested in aviation?
Well, that's a good question. I was born an Army brat at Fort
Hmm.
Bragg. My dad was 82nd Airborne, Green Beret, and did some Vietnam tours. And growing up, or starting the first 10 year or 11 years was at Fort Bragg, all you see is Hueys and Cobras flying around. And of course, Pope Air Force Base is right there.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, we'd go out and watch the C-130s, which is the first airplane I fell in love with. But years later, I asked my dad, because nobody in my family is a pilot, nobody likes airplanes,
Hmm.
history, whatever. Well, I did have a distant cousin that landed on D-Day at Normandy. I found that out, but I didn't know the person. He passed away. And I asked my dad, how did this come about? He said, I don't know, but he said nobody in our family is really into airplanes, but you would jump up and down in your crib every time a Huey or Cobra would fly over because we live near the Fort
Yeah.
Bragg, near Post. And so basically, I just it was ingrained from the beginning, and grew up. And we ended up moving to Barksdale Air Force Base, Northwest Louisiana. And of course, that was the first time. That was right at the tail end of Vietnam. And I saw those. First thing I asked when we went into the housing office was, "Where's the B-52s?" Because I'd never seen one. And they had the nose docks out there and had the big tail sticking out, and the D models back then before they got rid of them. And so I basically grew up in the Shreveport Bossier area and just right next to the flight path for Barksdale. And watching, like we were saying earlier, the 135A models shaking the house when they were taking off, and the G model B-52s, same thing, just shaking the house literally. And I ended up through high schools in ROTC, Air Force ROTC, and did some tanker missions, couple tanker missions, which was fun. And I ended up right after high school joining the Aero Club at Barksdale, and I ended up soloing out there a little Cessna 150. And I remember one time my instructor let me out. He got out and said, "Go out and give me a couple of landings." And this is at Barksdale, so it takes 20 minutes to taxi out to the runway. And I could hear the tower talking to a T-38 that was landing, and I guess he explained on UHF what I was doing, my first solo in this little blue and white Cessna. And the I pulled off to the side to do my run up, in this 38 taxied by a white one, and both pilots were doing this. I mean, what a send off. So I was in the Air Force, joined Air Force Reserve, went to college. Uh, it's, basically my art was something that was always in the background, but I never really pursued it seriously. I've always considered myself, quote, an artist, but went to college and did fine art for about 2 years. And then took some wonderful drawing classes, which if you look at my site, I have a lot of drawing because I always feel like that's my bedrock. But color, I switched to history right before we got into color because they were trying to make me into like a commercial artist. And if I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to be a quote fine artist, representational landscapes and maybe airplanes. And let me back up a little bit. During high school, I ran into a book at the Barksdale BX that changed my life. It was called "A Thousand Destroyed" by Grover Hall. He was the public relations officer for the Fourth Fighter Group.
Great book. Great book.
I devoured that book, and it was a reprint. They had them, it was back in the late 70s. They had them reprinted there, and just a whole rack of them. I can still remember. And I just devoured that. And what changed my life, I would always say, was instead of focusing on the aircraft, he focused on the people. And he called him the Blakesley Waffa. Don Blakesley was the leader in the 44 and 43 and 44. And so I thought, as I grew, developed and matured, I thought, if I was going to get into art, I'm going to focus on the stories of the people. And which the airplanes are cool too. I love the airplanes, but I always, if you look at my site, I've got a lot about the pilot, or the action. I want people who have never had no interest in art, no interest in aviation art, but they might stumble upon my site. They read it and go, "That's a pretty picture of a P-51 or whatever." But oh, look, that guy was, 21 years old when he did all this, son, and you're in college, you should be doing something like this. So, it's just amazing. In World War II, the stories are so young, and, farmers, and next thing you know, hey, Pearl Harbor, and let me sign up, and they go right on through, and fly Mustangs or whatever, or bombers, and then go back home and go back to the farm. It's just amazing, the stories. And so it was probably, like I said, art was kind of in the background, and I was read a lot constantly. And my grandmother's and grandfather's house was in South Louisiana, where my mom and dad are originally from. And right across the street was a crop duster strip. So I got to watch the ag cats, and just, it was magical to me how they would land and just whip around, and the engines just idling there, that big biplane yellow, and the pilot would get out while the engine's just idling, and go have a sandwich or something. And they'd bring the hopper, refill and he'd go right back out. I thought that's amazing, and the wings are rocking, I just thought I could stay there for, I did stay there for hours just watching these guys. And it's probably in the late 90s. I hadn't done any art in a long time, and working like what artists call real jobs. And I just decided one day, it's like the angels were, my muse was telling me, use it or lose it, are you going to do this art thing or not? And then I said, you know what? This is right before the internet hit. And I go, well, I never really pursued it seriously before because it's just so hard to market, and it's a lot of time. And I tried advertising, that's expensive. And I said, but you know what? I'm going to learn how to paint in color, and I don't care if I make any money at it. And so I went and bought some books and just slowly, I mean, it's still learning now, but um, it was maybe a year or so after that when I'd done a couple of paintings of my wife and I were over at a friend's house, and he said, well, I've got this internet thing. I said, I've heard of that. And I said, well, here's how I'm going to decide whether the internet's for me. I said, look up Keith Ferris. And he typed it in, and I saw pictures, images of the paintings, and then add to cart right under the image. And I go, bingo. That's what I was waiting for. And so I'm just been, I love the internet. I mean, it literally enabled me to do what I'm doing and connect with people all over the world, like everybody,
And I noticed the shirt that you're wearing too, the American Society of Aviation Artists,
Yes.
which Keith Ferris has been an icon at. Okay.
I have a
And
funny story about that.
and I'm going to ask you about that here in just a few minutes. Okay. Because he was, when I was growing up in the 70s, he was the aviation artist that everybody followed.
The
Okay.
dean of aviation
He was
artists.
the
Yeah.
dean of aviation art. Okay.
Mhm.
And all of his paintings, particularly, flying during the Vietnam War, actually deploying in the back seat of an F4E on its way over
Mhm.
there.
Oh yeah.
And of course, the one that I loved was Big Brass Ones, the Wild
Oh
Weasel
yeah.
one that
That's
he
one of
did.
my
Okay.
favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's one of my absolute favorites also. Okay.
Beautiful view of the thud. Yeah.
Yeah. And, the profile and the name on the thud and everything, and how he captured the weapons that it has on it, and the mission and everything, he is absolutely, everybody started in my generation started with Keith Ferris,
Yeah,
you
that big
know.
mural, a couple of murals up at the Smithsonian, and
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, you
yeah,
go up there and and he's not a big guy, all
yeah,
right? And you
yeah. We're
see
about the
this
same height, me and Keith.
you see this little man, you see this guy, this older gentleman up there with his brushes doing his thing, okay? And I remember seeing a video of him like, painting that
Hmm.
B-17 on the wall. And it was
75 foot wide. It's amazing.
yeah. I mean, what do you do with a 75-foot canvas, And he just went, "Oh, I'm going to do this." And it's
Mhm.
freaking gorgeous,
Oh,
okay?
it's beautiful. I don't know if I'd ever want to do that because just to keep the paints matched, all the way through. I don't know if I'd be able to do that. I can't do it on these small ones.
Yeah. So tell us your funny story about Keith.
Well, this was right after I had done I think two paintings. I had heard of the American Society of Aviation Artists, and I thought, well, I'm gonna join, And they had just happened to be Keith was offering a color class, and I go, well, that's great. I need to learn. I mean, I'm it's kind of my mid 30s when I decided I'm going to do this, no matter what. If I make any money, or I'm just going to do it, it's going to be my hobby for life. And I joined the ASAA and went down there, and I brought the first painting I did was actually pretty good. It was an F-15 Spirit of the Shogun, and it was just that was a fluke, I really didn't know what I was doing. And the second one, I kind of made up the scene, and it was terrible. It was a Mustang, which you will not find on my website. And I brought it there, and I thought, you know, if I'm going to do this, I'm late in starting. I need to know what I'm doing wrong. I need to shave some years off here. So I had the painting there, and each forum or each meeting, you can bring work that's not for judging. It's just for to show people what you're doing. And I brought that, and I thought, well, yeah, it looks pretty good, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was talking to one of the older members who's kind of retired, but he just showed up to for fun. And I said, Matt, what I've gotten a late start to all this. You've been an artist your whole life, worked in Hollywood and all this. What do I do? And he said, I saw your Mustang there. And he was very nice about it. He said, go to Keith, go to Gil Cohen, go to all these guys. I don't want to leave out any names, but everybody, just go ask them for a private critique. And I thought, oh, private critique, okay, yeah. So I went and I went up to Keith. He was signing some prints, I remember. And I said, Keith, and Keith's such a nice guy, you put you at ease right away, just a normal guy. And I said, Keith, can I get a private critique of this Mustang? And he starts smiling. He goes, oh, I've been waiting for this. And so we go over there. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. We go over there and he goes, the first thing he says, Wade, he said, you've done just about everything wrong that you could do wrong. And and it's being more mature and knowing that I needed the help, I was like a sponge, give it to me, baby. And so he went through and spent about 20 minutes just pointing at you, just little technical stuff. And he said, your drawing ability is good, which in painting means the lines, the outline. He said, you got that down. And he said, your olive drab on the Mustang is good. You got a good color mix. Other than that, nothing was positive. It was all, well, it was constructive. And so I thought, good, 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 good. Boy, I learned a lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I went back to my hotel room, and which was just down the hall, and I drew a little diagram of the airplane, and I wrote down all the things he said. And so I was like, yeah, yeah. I mean, I was excited. I went back and I asked Gil Cohen, another, famous artist, and they all, and I'd say about five or six people that I knew and that I knew their work. And it was good because they all said basically the same things. And I thought, that's awesome. And then I actually, long story short, I ended up doing that same painting again, larger, and with all the corrections. And I sent a picture to Keith. This was maybe a year or so after that. And he said, looks like you've been listening. So and literally it's just been through ASA and just never quitting and self-study and attending of some online, classes, virtual classes, and buying videos of artists, even because as aviation artists, it doesn't matter if you get, all 42 rivets in the right place on panel 19. You have to paint a picture, so you have to learn how to paint and skies and mountains and groundwork. And the airplane is just part of that environment. So, and I see a lot of artists who are really good. They know their airplane, every rivet is perfect, but they have no background like in a drawing because that's not important to them. Well, I thought, well, if I'm going to make some money at this over time, I'm going to have to learn all this stuff. So I luckily, I'm glad I made that decision. I concentrated on landscapes and, what colors do they use? There's about a million different shades of red, warm, cool, and the same with all the colors. And it's complicated, unless you go to school, which I recommend, you're gonna have to learn all this on your own. And then going back to more ASA meetings and getting more critiques. And that's what they're there for, is to make you better. And eventually the criticisms get less and the positive things get more. And that's just probably true of any difficult task, writing, anything creative. You're going to have to go through that period of learning what to do and learning what not to do and recognizing in your own work, oh, this is not good. I need to change this, and I'd say probably within the last, 5 years that I really started feeling like, okay, I think I've got a handle on it. And that's a lot of hours and a lot of paintings, drawings, and, you know, but that was the funny thing about Keith. He couldn't wait, to tell me. But it was good. It probably took 5, 6 years off my learning curve by going to the ASA and getting that that good constructive criticism.
And you know what? Getting criticism from somebody like him, okay, learning from Keith Ferris, right? Like you
Because
said,
you're learning. Yeah.
the dean of really aviation art, Gil Cohen, I know.
Oh yeah.
I actually had a personal relationship with Matt Walkie for a long time, and he's
I know
another.
the name. I never met him, but I know who he is. Yeah.
They're twin brothers. They're Mark and Matt Walkie, and
Yeah, they
and
did those models that were just
oh
incredible
my
and
gosh,
good
yeah.
artists too. Yeah.
Yeah, incredible artist. So I got a funny story about Matt. Okay, I went up to see him one day because he lives here in Utah. I
Utah.
haven't
Yeah.
seen him in years, but I did model airplanes too. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and humbling, I think, is the word I would use. I thought I was a good um, model builder. Okay,
Oh yeah.
he was doing a Wild Weasel F-105. All right, and I looked down in the cockpit and I just about cried. I
Oh
said,
no.
will I ever get to that? And he goes, oh, let me show you one other thing. Okay. He takes the back end of the 148 scale monogram Wild Weasel off the back, takes the
Mhm.
engine out and goes, look at this. And he blows into the fan blades of the engine and they start turning.
I remember that. Oh my God. Yeah.
And I went, this is ridiculous. And he goes, well, I do this, to kind of take a break from painting, and I'm like going, you got to be kidding me, you know? And of course, he took that to an International Plastic Modeler Society show and everything. And of course, it won
Hmm.
Best of Show.
I
Okay.
remember that. Yeah. Yeah. I remember
And
that.
I thought to myself, here's a guy that can not only paint the airplane, but is
Mm.
truly a builder of the airplane too. All right. I mean,
Oh
it
yeah.
was it was crazy. Okay. So I want to get back, and I talked to you about this before we started the recording about some of your paintings, okay? Because you talked about colors and things like that. And the first
Hmm.
one I want to talk to you about is the moonscape painting, where you
Oh,
have
that
a
on the
single
shoulders
astronaut,
of giants. Yeah.
yes, on the shoulder of giants, okay?
Mm.
Because the moonscape is freaking all gray with a lot of sunlight. All right.
Hmm.
How in the world did you capture that the way you did? And then you have, of course, this bright white astronaut, okay, walking across this moonscape.
That was believe it or not, that was one I always wanted to do. I had seen Harrison Schmitt, the Jack Schmitt, the geologist on Apollo 17, give a speech one time, and I thought, well, he's the only moonwalker I've ever seen. So he's my favorite, and of course Apollo 17 was so cool. I mean, they're 3 days on the moon. I mean, and Gene Cernan, was a great ambassador for the whole program, and read his book and all that. And I always wanted to do, I'd seen those pictures that I based the painting on the NASA site, where it's just a big panoramic and they're standing in this, Gene is standing in the boulders around the Camelot, the 100 million-year-old crater, and uh, and captured Schmidt going back to the lunar rover, and they're going to go back to their lunar module. But the pictures are kind of crooked, offset because he's got that chest camera and he can't, he's kind of turning and doing a panoramic. So long story short, I always wanted to do that just for myself. And because the Apollo people, there's not a lot of Apollo's art, collectors out there that at least that I know of. And I thought I'm just going to do it for myself. And I'm going to do it huge, 24 by 48. And I put the 3 or 4 pictures together from the NASA site, and I kind of adjusted them in Photoshop. And of course, the exposures are all off. So I combined them, and then I did a big drawing about 22 inches wide, I think, of that scene, kind of nailing down all my tones. And so that concept drawing was basically a black and white version of how the painting was going to look. And I do that for almost all my work. And it's because I do all my thinking right there. The painting is the color and stuff is hard enough without figuring out values, lights and darks. So I nail everything down, do all the thinking on the concept drawing. And then I got this big canvas, 24 by 48 linen mounted to gator foam, I think it is. It's very, very light, very strong. And I literally painted the entire painting except for the black quote sky, which was a bigger brush. The entire painting was done with a small little brush, little tiny brush. And I had to figure out, you don't want to do it just gray, which is how most people would see it. So I kind of figured out a formulation of what color mixture I need. It's like gray with some brown and some red, and doesn't really probably translate to the on the website, but when you see it in person, it comes out. Your human eyes are much better than the screen at picking up nuance. And painted the whole painting and had it framed, and which was not cheap. And it's hanging in our living room now. But it was fun to do that because you have to, and the astronaut, I lit him up real good. And then when I was finishing it, I noticed the drawing did not have the Earth in there, and for good reason, because their latitude on the moon, the Earth, tidal lock, the moon would have been much higher in the sky as they saw it. But I thought I need some color in here. So I put the Earth down in there and I tried to match the lighting that the astronaut had and the rocks and everything else. And so my space geek friends will say that Earth is not supposed to be there. And I said it looks a lot better with it though. I said as long as I can explain why it's there instead of going, huh? Then they accept that. They go, okay, well, you did it for artistic reasons. And I said, I have an ATP in my artistic license, so I'm I'm qualified to do whatever I need to do to make the painting. And it looks good. The Earth, a big blue marble out there, and I couldn't put it any higher because the painting wasn't that tall. But that's the story of that one.
Oh, when I saw that, I was just like going, oh my gosh, because you think just lots of grays, different shades of grays. And you said you used red and brown and things like that, and I wouldn't have thought any of that.
Well, that's
How do
part
you,
of the research is I learned that, the astronauts, when they would be flying around, even from, the first mission, Apollo 8, their comments were, it depends on the lighting, it could look brown, it could be, all kind of colors. So I thought, well, in my research, I wrote down some of the colors they were talking about. And when I finished the painting, I kind of glazed, which is a thin, wash. I glazed some reds and, greens. I did everything. So because the paintings, you want them historically correct, but they have to sing. They have to, you don't want it dull. And some of the astronauts said that's the dullest, bleakest place I ever saw. Well, if I do that on a painting, any painting, even if it's accurate, it won't carry, it won't be a good piece of art. And it has to be a good piece of art as much as it has to be historically accurate, or it's a failure. you know. And so I'll stick with the cold stark reality is what I start with, and then I'll add what I need to do. I just do what I need to do, and without going over the top. I'm not going to put any, wild pinks or anything. But if you look at the original, you can see, the different shades of, and it's very subtle. You don't want to overdo it because that's not the way it was. That would be too much. But so you just do what you have to do.
So now let's go to one that has a lot of color in it. Chico.
Yeah, that one, that's an interesting one because that was, if you've seen, if you've heard of it or been on my site, that was an unusual F4. And I was working at a museum here in Birmingham, Southern Museum of Flight, for a few years when we first moved here. And my boss was, he was retired from the Air Force, and then he worked at UAB, our local university, as a vice president of business affairs for 20 years. So he had two retirements. So he's up in his 70s, and he was doing the museum directorship as a kind of a fun thing. And he hired me when we first moved here. And he said, "Oh, we eventually got around to talking in aviation." And he said, "Oh, I flew F4s in Vietnam." And I was like, "Oh, wow." And he started telling me the story of Chico. And I said, "You know what? These modelers are never going to believe this." But, it had the two gun pods and the internal cannon, and he got the Silver Star for this mission and started telling me about it. And so we decided, he commissioned me to paint that. And it was so funny because that was my first print. Actually, that was my third painting. I did that right after the first ASA meeting and Keith Ferris and all that. So that was my first quote good painting, I'd say. And I would take the prints to model shows and stuff, and I had more people telling me that never happened. And I'm like, I've seen. And the funny thing is, that was done in 1999, and at first there was that didn't happen. And I'm like, I didn't know what a scanner was back then, didn't have all that. So otherwise I would have scanned all his pictures, which I use for reference. And the funny thing is now you go and they've got die cast models of it, um, aftermarket decal sets of it. And it all started with him telling me, about that. And now, of course, it's a big deal. They got models, people build models of it. And after I'd go to model shows in Atlanta, and that never happened. That's not, you made that up. And I'm like, and all I'm saying is, well, my boss, told me, and he's with the gunfighters in Da Nang, and nah, nah, nah. I was like, well, now it's the opposite. Everybody loves Chico. So that was my first quote good painting. It's my first color print actually too.
So to all my listeners out there, Chico the Gunfighter is the name of the print. Okay. And when you first see it, you go, there's no F4E that has ever carried gun pods and those white rockeye bombs. Okay.
Hmm.
But in fact, there was a configuration like that. Okay. And
Mm.
your depiction of Chico the Gunfighter is just superb. Okay.
Thank
Flying
you.
low over the jungle, the big gun pods out on the outboards, with the Mark 20 rock eyes on the inboards,
Hmm.
flat mounted, and everything. And it's just a wonderful painting. Okay. I didn't know it was your third painting though. Okay. So
Yeah,
this would,
after my first one, like I said, the F-15, then I did the Mustang, which shall remain hidden away forever. And at the time, we had small kids, and I had the real job, so I wasn't painting a lot. So third painting is not like, oh, that was a few months later. I mean, that was like 2 years later, and and then I had learned all that stuff, and then I applied it to that painting, and that was in acrylics actually. That was I started off in acrylics because oil I had many aborted efforts trying to paint in oil over those years when I was kind of it was in the background. And it would convince me. I'd start a painting, it was a big mess, and okay, well, art color's not for me. I'll just stick with drawing. Whatever I do, if I do it, it'll be drawing. But I realized that there was no money in that, for full time.
yeah, I have a similar story, Wade, of a model I built. And my first base was Pease Air Force Base. Okay. And
Oh
I
yeah,
actually had a guy who was an F-105 Ryan Raider in the
wow.
wing. Okay. And I said, this is a great story, an unusual paint scheme on the airplane, unusual missions that they did and everything. And he says, well, my pilot lives over in Manchester. We could like come to your apartment and talk about this and everything.
Yeah.
And so, believe it or not, here I have a backseater and a front seater in my
Mm.
apartment, and they're just talking these stories about flying thuds. And it was
Wow.
freaking amazing. Okay.
Mm.
And the interesting thing of, as you know, about the Ryan Raider 105s was its wraparound paint scheme. Okay.
Mm.
And nobody had ever painted that. There's a few black and white pictures of it. I've actually found a couple color pictures now.
Hmm.
And, the wing tanks have got splotches on them of tan and green and weird bomb loads. And he told me about some of the missions and everything. So I built the airplane, all right, and
What
took it
scale
to
do you remember?
it was the monogram kit. The
1/48th
monogram one,
probably.
yeah, 148 scale. It was the F-105F,
Hmm.
but they had told me, here's how we configured the airplane. We sometimes have a Shrike on one side, the ECM pod on the other, because we couldn't go downtown without the ECM pod. Sometimes we carried
Hmm.
6 750s. He says we had one mission where he carried cluster bombs. We were doing a house. I said, what? He says, yeah, a bunch of generals were having this like commander's huddle and everything. We found out about it, and we dropped the cluster bombs on the house, just tore it all up. And I took, well, it was a fascinating story because they're going in low level in an airplane that's not built to go low level at night. It's built to go low level, but not at night. And so, he said we came up to our IP, we're spot on, and they took the stick out of the back, and they had this pedestal that had this like tracking ball for the radar on it that he would move around, and the
Mm-hmm.
cursor would move around the radar, and it had like a little cigarette lighter that he'd like punch like this, go like this, and it would lock, the wherever the cursor was looking into the
Mm-hmm.
weapons computer. Okay. He says they turned off the IP, and he says this mansion just showed up bigger in Dallas. He says, "Oh, this is going to be great," and he punches the little cigarette button, and all the bombs came off at the perfect time. And he said we kind of went like this and turned up like this, looking back. And he says the house just splinters into like a million pieces. Okay. And he said that's one of the missions that I remember that, we came home with that from that mission, with a high sense of satisfaction, because there was a number of high ranking North Vietnamese army generals and colonels that were in that building,
Mm-hmm.
and they were getting ready to
Wow.
do like some big offensive, and they just killed all the leadership. All right.
Mm.
And I took that model to a IPMS regional show, and everybody just boo-hooed it. It doesn't look like that. It never carried those kinds of weapons. Yada yada yada. And then I showed them the pictures, and everybody went, "Oh, okay." And the guy from IPMS magazine said, "I would really like to do a article on this airplane." Okay, which really pissed off
That's
the
how it
two
starts. Yeah.
guys. Yeah, it really pissed off the two guys that won in that category. Okay, I'm the number one guy. This guy was really full of himself. Okay, and
Not unusual.
yeah, not unusual. Okay, he was a rivet counter, and he did an
Yeah.
F-14, and as you know, on the F-14, the wing pylons, uh the front fins go up into the pylon. Okay. Well, he had it X like
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
and he had the missiles mounted wrong, everything, but yet he won first place. And I just went, yeah, okay, whatever. But there was a lot of people that were upset because IPMS magazine wanted to do the story on my airplane, mostly because of the story behind the model, like you
Mm-hmm.
and like your paintings. Okay. Now I see you have a painting that you're working on here. Okay. And I
Yeah.
know it's about a very famous family. Why don't you talk about
Yes.
that for just a moment? Okay. The Flatleys.
Yes. Well, of course, everybody has heard of the Flatleys, and one day, or at least heard of the father. The guy in World War II, Jimmy Flatley. You know, very famous fighter leader, and introduced the Hellcat into combat. And there's a famous Hellcat picture of him sitting on the deck, like with his hand up on the window, the cockpit sill, doing like this, and a very famous color picture. And I was contacted by Joe, one of his grandsons, and he said, "Hey, I love your art. Is there any way you can do like a fantasy formation of my grandfather?" My father, Jimmy Flatley's son, was a Vietnam F-4 pilot, and his son, that's James, and his sons, one Seamus flew F-14s, was squadron commander, and then Joe flew Hornets. And he said, "Can you put them all together?" And backing up, one of the things besides learning color was I had to learn how to not use a photograph. I had to be able to say yes to any scene that somebody wanted me to do. Do you want a Curtis Jenny and an F-86 trying to fly along together? Well, there's of course no photographs, so I learned how to do it through Keith Ferris, a thing called descriptive geometry, and it's an old drafting system. It's not computer based. And Keith had a little thing in his book about that, how he did an F4 painting like that. And of course, reading that one page description, you get a gist of what's going on. But so I got with Keith, and I got with some other people who had taken the classes he used to take on descriptive geometry. That was before I joined. Keith didn't do it anymore. And it's like a 3-day class, and Don Malco and Jerry Asher and Mike O'Neill, some of these old guys, not old, but older than me or been in ASA longer than me. And I started doing it, and they would critique it at the forums, the annual meetings. And so I started writing a manual for myself. I'm just for myself. I was going to say, well, I'm going to do like block airplanes. Like if I want to do one plane here and one plane banking, how do I do that? And as I did about 20 of them, I go, this would might be of interest to somebody else. So I ended up writing, long story short, I wrote a manual on how to do that. And so anyway, I thought, well, that's the perfect thing for like this Flatley picture. I can take four three views of aircraft, put them together, and the thing with this one, I don't know if you can see it, the jets, well, you can't see the other two, but the F-14 is the angle of attack is higher because that's more realistic that he's got his wings out. He's trying to stay with this Hellcat. And I looked at pictures, legacy flight pictures of Corsairs and other planes, Hornets staying with a Corsair. And that Hornet's jacked up because he's going, for him, that's slow and got his flaps down and everything. And so long story short, I did all the four aircraft. I've got my concept drawing for this scene on my website. And here I'm working on the painting or the underpainting. So that's why it's kind of brownish. There's nothing wrong with your screen. It's just I'm doing the underpainting in sepia tones. And that'll give me some context as I start doing everything in color. So basically, the goal is to make it look like it is done from a photograph of the real thing, but there was no photograph.
Yeah.
So to be successful in aviation art, you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to, and it took a long time. There's a lot of hours in this thing. The painting is kind of like the icing on the cake, really. The drawing and the plotting of the projections, the drafting. That's the hours. It's like I describe it. It's like doing math homework. You kind of get it, you kind of just get it done. When you finish a painting, you feel satisfaction. When I finish a projection, just the line drawing, I go, whew, okay, now I only got three more. So usually you don't have four of them in formation. That's when it's more critical because they have to sing together. You can't have one doing this or the angle of attack of the F4 especially, the same as the Hellcat. You got to have it cranked up a little bit because otherwise it wouldn't look right. If they're all at the same angle, deck angle, so I got to make it look like they're just flying by at an air show. Just, of course, we're up in the clouds though.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. You talk about angle of attack and all that stuff because what was that movie with the F-14s that went, the Nimitz goes back to like the day before Pearl
Oh,
Harbor or
Final
something like
Countdown.
Final Countdown. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
And you remember that dogfight scene, and you see, the zero and the nose of the Tomcat cranked up like this,
That's it. Yeah.
and so it all makes sense, it all makes sense. And and it's amazing now because you actually do see some of those airplanes flying together, you see
Yeah.
the P-1 flying with the F-35 or the F-22,
And it would have been a lot easier for me if, say, it was four Hellcats.
yeah,
They would be at the same alpha, same deck angle. It would be not that hard. But with the F-14, the F4, and the Hornet, I had to do another layer of that projections, calculations, if you want to call it that, to get the right. I had them in position. Now I've got to increase. I think I was like 3 degrees or whatever it was. I cranked all of the three jets up, and that way when I put them in their right position, they look like they're flying with a slow Hellcat. Or of course the Hellcat's pedaling as fast as he can, but the jets are just hanging on the blades, as they call it. And it was
yeah.
a lot of work, and luckily not all my paintings were like that. That was a lot of work, but I'm at the point now where it's fun. No more math homework.
Hey, talk to me about when I was on your website, the paintings on metal. Is that what it was? Metal.
uh, Now you can print on metal. Now I
That's what
just you can have prints done on metal, but
that's
I
what it
just
is.
paint on panel, linen.
Yeah. Talk to us about the prints on metal that you do. Because I had never seen anything quite like that.
Well, that's I go through my open edition stuff is through Fine Art America, which a lot of artists and photographers use, and they I just upload the file and they can print it on anything, tote
Hmm.
bags, stickers, prints, canvas prints that could
Yeah,
fill a
yeah.
room and that's and then when you get it, my first thought was when I was thinking about doing that a few years ago, I thought, the quality probably won't be that good. Do I want my name on that? And I've since visited with a few people who have bought prints from there. And jumping back a little bit, doing lithographs is very expensive because they have to do the entire run at one time because they have to tune the press with the colors and they have to waste a
Yep.
lot of paper just getting those primary colors right. And so it's once they get it locked in, they have to do the entire run. But with the G clays or prints through like Fine Art America, they can get it locked in, get all the files settings locked in, and just print one at a time if they want to. And I used to do that with canvas prints. I would get them and sign them. And it just got to where I was going to the post office all the time. I wasn't really getting anything done. So I thought, well, I'll just go the open edition route. And I do still have some limited edition stuff on my website. But Fine Art America, they print everything. And I was going over to some prints houses and they had some prints. I go, that looks pretty darn good. I mean, as somebody who would, you know, be more critical of it, at my own work. I was like, well, that looks pretty good. So I'll keep doing this Fine Art America. And they print on acrylic, they print on metal, whatever you want, canvas, paper. They can frame it or not frame it, everything. So it's really neat. It's a good way it saves me a lot of time
Yeah,
and gives
yeah,
people who want the image on a coffee mug, maybe,
yeah.
they can just order it. And I don't have to go to the post office. I don't have to pack it up, which is a major time sink. And I figured while that's going on, I can have more time to do drawings, more paintings. Because it really did. I was, you're a one-man shop. I was, if I'd get an order and I wanted to paint that day, and well, I've got to, I'm glad to have the sale, but now I've got to print, eBay, you got to get the stuff out within a day, so I got to stop what I'm doing. I got to go to get in line at the post office. And so it's working out great now. I just do, the paintings and a lot of drawings. And so I sell originals. But if anybody wants it printed on anything, like Christmas present or whatever, they just get on the Fine Art America website, search my name, and there's
And there it
most of my
is.
work. Yeah.
Uh, See, I have as you can see behind me, I've got a 4 foot
Hmm.
tanker, and
Cadena, huh?
yeah, yeah, I spent 5 years there, man. And from 1990 to 1995, it was absolutely, Wade, the best flying assignment I ever
I'll
had
bet.
because we literally were doing everything as a tanker unit there. And um, our wing commander, uh, his first assignment was 105s. He went over to Vietnam flying F-105s in 1967 timeframe. As you know, this is a really tough time to be in a 105s in Vietnam, and lived through it 100 missions, as a
Wow.
first lieutenant. Uh, and he's probably the biggest wing commander I ever worked for. He's like
Not
six foot
many
six, six foot
lieutenants were
seven.
flying the 105, I
No,
understand. Yeah.
no, there wasn't
Because
a lot of them.
it needed the experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and his name is Jeff Cliver. Call sign was Sea Liver, and one of the best wing commanders we ever worked for. Absolutely one of the finest commanders I've ever worked for.
Hmm.
And he opened all the cockpits up. He says, I want the F-15
Wow.
guys flying the tankers, the tanker guys flying the helicopters and everything. And so I got 3 rides in the backseat of an F-15. Okay.
Oh, wow.
With my camera with me everywhere I went.
Of
Those.
course.
I'll send you a couple
Yeah.
of those pictures because they really
Good.
turned out pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a Cadena tanker. That's 8874, which had my name on it. It's kind of
There you
cool when
go.
you can
Yeah.
walk out to an airplane and you go, that's me up there.
Yeah. Yeah. They'd
And
send the hero shots back home and
yeah, exactly, exactly. So uh, I have a side hustle called Wall Pilot where we do these 4, 6, and 8 feet printed on vinyl,
wow.
and they peel off and you can stick them on the wall.
I bet a
And
lot of
so,
squadrons get those.
yeah, and we've done a lot of amazing things. I've got them at the weapon school, the Bone Weapon School, ordered a bunch. Um,
Hmm.
the one of the Reaper attack squadrons ordered a big one that they come in the
Hmm.
squadron. There it is. And
Yeah.
the great thing is it's digital, and the F-15Es, carry lots of different bomb loads, as you well know.
You can just
I'll
put what you need on there.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a whole file that has nothing but bombs on it. Okay. that I can take off and put on them,
Hmm.
and all of my profiles I work in 48 inches, okay, in Adobe Illustrator,
Hmm.
and I can just zap whatever bomb load on them, or
Do
whatever.
you print those out, or do you
I
somebody?
have a printer in I have a printer in Utah, here in Utah,
Okay.
up in
Yeah.
Layton. Okay.
You just send in the file and
Yeah, I just sent them the file, and they and
uh
they have these big, huge rolls of vinyl that they print them on,
yeah.
and print them out. Okay. And the vinyl has that sticky backing to it because they do a lot of that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And they print like all of the cardboard cutouts for movie theaters. Okay. Which is really cool to go watch.
Oh yeah.
But, like you said, dealing with the shipping and all that stuff, I just don't have time. And
It is a time thing.
it's very time consuming. And fortunately for me, my printer does all that stuff. Okay. Prints it, drop
That
ships it,
saves.
everything.
It's worth paying a little extra, or in the
It
case of Fine Art
is.
America, making less profit because I don't have to do anything. I just
Yeah.
upload the file, as big a file as I can. They'll take, and they doing pretty well. I've never had a, knock on wood, I've never had a return, like somebody, this is not what I was expecting, so they must be happy.
Yeah. um, I've had a few of the, shall we say, carriers beat up some of the prints. All right.
Oh, they'll do that.
Um, somebody
You've
folded
got
one of
to
the,
pack. I learned the hard way. You've got to pack expecting them to throw it around the warehouse or run over it with a forklift or something, because I've had that happen. I've had people send me pictures, and one time it's usually critical when I send like an original drawing or original painting, but the drawings, of course, are smaller, and so I pack them like I call it bomb proof. I had one guy sent me a picture. He said from eBay. He said the package was ripped all to hell, but the drawing inside, I had them sandwiched between like 5 layers of cardboard on the top and bottom, and taped it really good. And he said, but the drawing was fine. And I said, well, that's usually that's what I'm aiming for.
yeah. And see, ours are rolled up, but they're put in square boxes because you have to pay extra if you put it in a tube. If you
Yeah,
send it,
they do charge extra for
because
what
they
they
don't
call
like
it
it rolling around. They don't like it rolling around.
non-standard. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't like it rolling around. Okay. And
Hmm.
I had a customer that sent me a picture that literally the box had a gash that went like halfway around it right in the middle. Like somebody had just taken a big sword and went whack, you know. And I sent it to my printer and he goes, "Oh, we'll just send him another one." And they
Yeah.
did,
That's the good
and
thing
they did.
about prints. With originals, I pack them
Oh,
like,
I
man,
know. I can only imagine.
because and they when you hand it to the clerk, postal clerk or FedEx or whatever, you kind of gulp because it's completely out of my hands now. I can pack it, but I can't.
Yeah.
And usually I've had pretty good luck. I've never had like I said, knock on wood, I've never had a painting messed up because I use museum quality boxes, and for
Mhm.
paintings especially. I mean, you've
Yeah.
got to have puncture guards top and bottom, and it's literally surrounded by a layer of foam on the bottom, a layer of foam on top, and the middle layer is foam, but you cut it out for the exact size
Yeah.
of the frame picture, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I mean, they literally have to throw it out of the airplane before it would get hurt. But the drawings, I just put them in boxes, and I
Yeah.
sandwich them between several layers of cardboard and tape it down real good. And so maybe the the outer box is kind of like a bumper. If it gets damaged, it's doing its job, in a car. And
Yeah.
but the inner thing, that's what I want to survive. The inner
Yeah.
box.
Hey, I'm gonna ask you some questions about some of your other ones too, okay?
Sure.
Um, Tell us the story of Kid Hofer and some of your paintings of his Salem representative airplane.
Oh my gosh. Well, he was, of course, a triple ace with the Fourth Fighter Group, and started out from Missouri, and went up to Canada and made his way, got trained there, and made his way over to England and joined the Fourth and scored his first combat victory on his very first mission. And when he got back in a P-47, and when he got back, the old hands, kind of like with Chico, that didn't happen. There's no way you can even have the eyesight, know what's going on. But sure enough, he got his very first kill on his very first combat mission. And he, if you read Thousand Destroyed, tells you all about him. He was kind of, he would not, he'd kind of go off by himself, which was totally against discipline. And later on, but he would always show up late, show back up with a couple of kills maybe, and ended up with like 15, I think 15 and a half or whatever it was, and was killed in July of 44. Um, but I went to several fourth fighter group reunions, and I actually talked to Don Blakesley, the commander, and some of those other guys. And I said, "What was the deal with Kit Hofer? I mean, why did you guys just let him?" He said, "Well, he was a damn good pilot, totally undisciplined. But we just figured the higher art, the higher ups and at the fourth just figured, well, the problem would probably take care of itself after a while, meaning he wouldn't come back." And that's exactly what happened. But there was some funny stories I heard about him. He had a dog, Duke, that he adopted, and he took him flying a couple times in a Mustang, and he'd like to pull up next to like a training flight, slow timing or something, pull up next to another guy and get down as far as he could, and the dog's sticking up, quote, flying the airplane. I mean, this is World War II. This stuff would never, there's no way.
Oh, it'd never fly now.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you'd probably be court-martialed.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was just the crazy times, and the Thousand Asteroid kind of outlines a lot of that stuff, and it was just amazing times over
Yeah,
there.
he was not only an amazing pilot, but was a really crack shot,
He
you
was.
know.
And the
And
thing I like also, not only does he have an interesting story, but his airplane was so cool. He
yeah,
had the white walls on his wheels. He had the invasion stripes for most of the after D-Day, and the olive drab top, and he had a Malcolm hood, bubble canopy. It just was a cool looking airplane, and so it looks good, you know, as a piece of art. So I've probably done his airplane in more works than any other single airplane, just because it looks so good.
well, and his personal emblem, Salem representative, with the horse and everything, is really cool too.
Yeah, okay, he was
Okay.
a boxer. He was like a amateur. I think he did some Golden Gloves, maybe. So he was a big guy, and he was, just unusual. And there's stories. There's more stories that about him. He's kind of, maybe had that attitude of, he just didn't care. He had death wish or whatever, because he had a lot of stuff going on at home, and you know certain fathers of certain daughters were looking to kill him, if he ever showed up again. And so he's made the most of it, I guess. And I think he showed up in late 43 flying P-47s, and went all the way through 44 when he was killed on the first Operation Frantic. And he went off
Yeah.
by himself over uh, Yugoslavia or whatever it was, I forgot. And he was shot down by anti-aircraft fire. They found him later and all this.
Yeah.
Interesting story.
Yeah, but he looks like he's like 14 years old.
Yeah, those guys. I did a drawing one time. It's on my called Fighter Pilots of Debden. It's on my website as a drawing, and I have a little blurb on each pilot. And the oldest one I think was 24, and they were all 336 Fighter Squadron uh, crew in front of a Mustang, and just yeah, they're if you're and Blakesley himself was about 26 when he was a full colonel in charge of that entire group, and led them, all of 44, and some before that in 43. And yeah, it's just amazing, the stories. And I'm that's what my goal is, to try to bring some of that to life and tell a lot about the pilots, and what they're doing, so that'll get capture the interest, the human interest part of it, not just a piece of art or not just a Mustang. I want to try to convey their experience, you know, and what they did, what their backstory was.
Well, and the fourth fighter group is one of my favorites, but my absolute favorite, 78th,
Yeah,
with the
Duxford.
checkerboard
Yeah.
noses. Okay. Talk to us about Dick Hewitt's airplane that you painted.
Oh, the big Dick. Yeah, of course, that's the I had to research that, and of course his name was Richard Dick Hewitt, and he was a like play dice, and on the airplane's got dice, so that's the traditional craps call of 10 is Big Dick, and that started out as a, commission, and it's just another, of course, the 78th, the Mustangs, that big checkerboard on their nose, and I was commissioned to do it because the guy liked the paint job, and Dick wrote a book, Targets of Opportunity, I think it was. And I read the book, and so I put him and a wingman together, coming right at you. And it's just a beautiful airplane and a good view, nose on. And that was one of my better paintings, I think, because it's a lot of warm early morning colors, And
Yeah, see, that's the other thing I was going to say about that was, you know, the the way you did the sunlight behind it, and the clouds and everything was just amazing,
yeah,
you
that's
know?
I normally do like going back to my own flying. I used to be an instructor, and the most fun flying for me was like instrument flying over the clouds, the cloud deck below you, and it's raining and bad weather below you, but above it's just this beautiful crystal blue sky, and you're just flying maybe 1,000 feet over this carpet of brilliant white clouds, and that's inspirational to me. So so most of my paintings are natural sunlight, not early morning or anything, because I just love that feeling of being over the clouds. And but that one, and I thought I'm going to challenge myself, and you've got to keep challenging yourself as an artist, or eventually all your paintings are going to look like they've been stamped out of a machine.
Yeah.
And so I thought I'm going to do some early morning colors and just pinks, and and so that's why that one looks that way.
And the contrast is just incredible with the polished aluminum airplanes, the black and white checkerboard nose, which is the hallmark of the 78 fighter group,
Hmm.
with the way you painted the sky condition at the time. I mean, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, that's one
Just
of those that you have to. It started out as models. That particular one has two Mustangs in it and a couple little ones way off in the distance. But the focus was on Hewitt's airplane and his wingman. And so I had to research those guys. And they started out as models. And then I put them in formation, the two models and Mustang models I have, which are still back there somewhere. And that was a rough outline of the scene. And so I have to take that image of the photograph of the models. And that's an alternative to doing the manual descriptive geometry, plotting, is if I have a good model, I can use the same principles of perspective using the model. And when I take that image of the photograph, I can correct if there's like a model, the wings might not have as much dihedral as the real thing. So I can correct that in a really detailed line drawing. And then I start with that, and then I might take those models out in the real sun, like one morning, and I can get where the cast shadows are. And then it's just a matter of doing that concept drawing where I'm taking it real slow, and reflections where, there's a shadow, or there's some, this that you got to form the shadows to the shape of the aircraft. And then this is going to be dark, this is going to be light, and do all that working out in black and white on the drawing. And then sometimes if it's really complicated, I'll do an oil study, a small painting. But I kind of, I spend so much time on the concept drawings that I pretty much know where I'm going to go. The old saying is, if it looks good in black and white, it'll look good in color, because value, light and dark is the foundation of art. The color is just the decoration, the icing. And then I can go to color, and I just start mixing up some pinks, and go, that looks good. And I start putting it on the canvas. Okay. And next thing you know, the sky's done. And of course, I'll look for something like that. I can look at, just airline photographs online or something, like, okay, this is kind of the pink to shoot for. It won't be the same scene, same clouds, but I like that pink. And oh, in those conditions, the sky will do this. So, and of course, that's a photograph, so I'm trying to translate that in pigment, which is quite limited compared to the natural world. And so you just take it slow, and, try to, and then you see how it's going, and it looks great, and just press on. And the airplanes themselves, to me, are easy. That's the easy part. I still struggle sometimes with the clouds and the sky and the colors of the sky, and that to me is like, I'm a little bit more, nervous about that. But once I get to the aircraft themselves, I feel at home. That's from all my vast drawing experience of just doing aircraft. So that's the quote quote easy part for me is the aircraft.
There's another one that I was really fascinated when I saw it on your website, Wade, and that was the ME 163 painting.
Oh
And
yeah.
um, it has a very unusual name that I'm looking at. I'm like, I don't even know how to pronounce that. Okay. And is
Oh,
that,
you talking about the comet by itself?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, like a flea.
yeah,
That was one of my studies for a bigger painting that had a Mustang shooting that one
yeah.
down.
And I saw the bigger painting too. Okay. So
Mhm.
is that one based on a real event or is that,
Yeah,
uh,
there's actually another fourth five group pilot. Every once in a while I'll do two somebody else, three fourth five group, one something else, three more fourth five group. But that was the actual event where it was November of '44. Captain Lewis Norley flying his Mustang. They I have it on my website, the whole story about it, but they were going out to escort some bombers, and before they got to the bombers, they saw these streaks just going straight up, contrails, and it was the rocket fighters. And they had known through intel and past experience, well, the bombers are way up here, we're down here, and the comets went straight up to attack them, but they're going to have to glide down, so we're going to wait for them. And I based the action on the actual combat report, which is online, and in the fourth five group diaries. And he said this comet was, gliding back down to their base, and he was going so fast to get behind it that he overshot it. And he says in his report, his combat report, that he repositioned and came up behind it, and the comet was had a little bit of juice left, and he increased the throttle. He could see the smoke coming out, so he knew he had the rocket was operating, and he did a really high drag turn, really tight turn. And of course, as a pilot, the increased turn, that's more drag, and so that slowed the rocket fighter down, and he got behind him, and that's the moment of the painting where he's just finished firing and pieces are coming off, and the comet just rolled over. He said straight down into some little village somewhere.
oh,
But
geez.
yeah, that then they actually have, if you look for it and that research it, they have the gun camera film from his, little stills from that. And so that's how I got the angle of the ME 163 was I pretty much just pretty close to what his description and the few stills from his gun camera showed. I think the background's a little different, but I just wanted my own clouds in there.
I found gun camera film, actual a movie of a 163 getting shot at. Okay. And of course, as you know, and any historian knows, that thing was filled with very, very toxic fuel, you know, and uh, there, I mean, they like cooked one test pilot, melted him down, and when it crashed, and um, the
That must have
farting
been a
fleas,
ride.
man. Yeah, and the farting fleas, man, it had that little farting flea on the nose. But the International Plastic Modeler Society chapter in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, is
Mhm.
uh, where the guy that kind of helped create that airplane, I can't remember his name, Clips or whatever. Anyway,
Mhm.
he came there and worked at
Wow.
Rockwell Collins. Okay, and so the IPMS chapter is called the Farting Fleas. And so that's always been a fascinating airplane. And when I saw that drawing of yours and I saw that of yours, I got to ask him about that because that was
Yeah,
really at that time period. That was one of those projects that was really way out there, you know.
they were desperate, last days of the war, and too much,
Yeah,
too little, too late,
yeah. And I don't know if you know this or not. I'll send it to you because I did a TikTok and YouTube post on this. There's pictures of it, the 163 being shot at, but there's also surviving gun camera from a 163 shooting a
No,
B-17. It's
oh
the
boy.
only piece it's like 17 seconds long and it has a 30 millimeter cannon on it, as you know. Not a lot of rounds, but it's got a big gun on it. And I mean, it's just taking like whole sections off the wing.
If they hit them just right, they could take a wing off a bomber. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, like you said, this was one of those last ditch desperation kind of things. But that's always been one of my favorite airplanes and really fascinating airplanes was the ME
I can
163.
imagine, hitting the rocket motor and just going straight up.
Oh, I know. You know,
Vertical contrails. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. It's like riding the shuttle, you know,
I, those
and then all
guys
of a
were.
sudden the rocket motor is like gone. And now, you know, you're just kind of free floating, you know, and I think, you know, their missions only lasted like 8 to 12 minutes or something
Wasn't
like that.
very
It was really
long.
short. It
Oh
was
my
really
God.
short.
And then like I said, the Mustang drivers knew, and the other planes, Thunderbolts, they knew, okay, well, we'll let you go up there. We're not going to catch you. So we're just going to wait. And in the combat report, he said, our squadron leader, squadron commander said, let's just orbit down here below the clouds, wait for them because they're coming down. And
Yeah.
they got like two that day, I think, which was a lot, for those planes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Cause there wasn't that many of them.
yeah, yeah.
There
And
wasn't that many of them.
yeah.
So my other favorite unit is the 352nd.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
you know,
Blue nosed.
the blue nosed bastards of Bodney, you know,
Yeah.
and one of my personal heroes, and gosh, I wish I could have met him, was George Preddy. And obviously you've done a couple of his airplanes too. Talk about that for a moment. And George, tell George background.
Yeah, he's from North Carolina. That's, of course, like I said, that's where I was born. But he went over and 352nd Fighter Group at Bodney and flew P-47s and then Razorback Mustangs and then the D model Mustang and went home on, I think, August or September of 44, went home for 30 days and voluntary came back and was made a squadron commander because he was assigned a squadron that was kind of low performing or their morale was a little low, and he brought him back up and was ended up famous story of getting shot down, killed by friendly fire in
On
Belgium, I think it
Christmas
was
Day. Yeah, on
on
Christmas
Christmas
Day.
Day of 44. Yeah,
Yeah.
and but his planes are named Cripes and Mighty, which is supposed to be, I think, when he was his saying when he would play cards or shoot dice or something. That was a famous phrase that he used. So all his Thunderbolt and his Mustangs were named Cripes and Mighty.
Yeah. He was a big poker player, you know,
Yeah.
but he ends the war, you know, he gets killed, but he's got like 28 kills. I mean, and he gets six in one day, one
Yeah,
mission.
that he was the most successful Mustang pilot of all time, And his plane, Cripes and Mighty the third, the famous one that you see in a lot of model kits, I believe that airframe has the most kills of any Mustang. I'd have to look back at that, but I know he's the most successful Mustang pilot in terms of kills
Uh,
of any.
the story about his six kills in one day is pretty fascinating. They were told they weren't going to fly, so they all went and got drunk. You know, they're all drinking and playing cards and
That's
everything like
right.
that, you know. And then
August
about
of 44. Yeah.
yeah, August 44, he gets told like 4 o'clock in the morning, hey, the mission's back on, and they're all hung over. He's all hung over and everything.
Mhm.
And he goes up, you know, hung over in the airplane and shoots down six enemy
Six, yeah.
airplanes in one mission.
All fighters, yeah.
All
And
fighters.
he
Yeah.
there's pictures when he came back. There's a series of pictures, and I did a couple of drawings from those pictures, but the photographs are great because he's got a look on his face like, man, I just want to get out of this
He
airplane.
is wore out. Everybody's on the wing of his plane, you know, because they can see.
They're all happy, and he
Yeah.
doesn't look, he's not
No,
smiling.
he doesn't look happy at all. Okay. You know, and of course, you know, people are standing on the airplane because they realize something really crazy has happened because he's got oil streaks going down the side of the plane. All right. And
Mhm.
they only did that when they were max performing the airplane. And so
Yeah,
they
they had
knew,
that little the crankcase overflow, the
yeah,
breather port,
yeah,
and when they came back with the streaks of oil on the side, which I've tried to put in a couple of my paintings, you know that there's been some heavy maneuvering,
yeah,
and of course the guns have the gun residue there.
yeah.
And And
Yeah.
they probably radioed ahead. Hey, we got George got a few.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, everybody got a few that day, but George got six in one mission.
That
And
was amazing.
they put him in for the Medal of Honor and he didn't get it, which I thought was really unusual, you know?
Yeah, there's been other stories like Don Gentili's family was because if you look at it objectively, there was some pilots got the Medal of Honor for doing the same thing as other pilots. I mean, they're all heroic, did remarkable deeds, but some pilots did the same thing, like George shooting down six, and William Shomo in the Pacific shot
Mhm.
down what, seven in one day, and he got the Medal
Yeah.
of Honor from MacArthur. So I guess six is the cutoff for, seven is the cutoff.
I know.
I think, yeah, I mean, they were all did remarkable things, but there was, I know the Gentili family, Don Gentili, the Fourth Fighter Group, was looking at put a package together a few years ago, and I know his son uh, ended up being an F-16 pilot of the three sons that Don Gentili had, and they put this nice package together and submitted it, and the current military was just not interested in pursuing that.
Yeah. Well, and there's another guy, David McCampbell, you know,
Yeah,
and a Hellcat.
he was from actually born and raised in Bessemer, which is about 5 minutes down the road from me. And if you know he's from Alabama, when you see videos of him talking, just roll tide, but I think he went to Naval Academy and all this. But he started Bessemer, Alabama, just a little town close to me. And he what 34 kills. He did get the Medal of Honor. Of course, that was so remarkable compared to his peers.
Yeah. He goes up against a rate of like 50 something airplanes.
Oh yeah.
And he and his wingmen are like going, well, I may see on the deck, I may not. And I think he lands with like 6 or 8 gallons of gas and like, 4 or 5 rounds left for each gun. I mean, it was an incredible story.
I'm amazed at how they could, in the middle of the Pacific, they can take off the carrier, go out. If you're just doing like a training mission, you can kind of use your plotting board and figure out, okay, the carrier is supposed to be going this way at this speed. So if I go this direction, I'm probably going to hit it. Then go out and do all these wild dogfights where at least I would be completely disoriented. Maybe your gyros tumbled or something, and then they go back to the carrier more often than not and find it. And that's always amazing. No GPS, no, as a pilot, that always amazed me
Yeah.
how
No
they could do
radio
that.
nav aids or nothing. It's just like, oh, well, the carrier should be here.
I think all they would have, if they did have anything, would be maybe an NDB or ADF when they got close to the carrier. But I mean, I mean, that's a big ocean.
Oh, I know. Yeah, absolutely.
Midway, story of Midway, that's another painting of mine. I mean, they go out and they're looking for the Japanese, and the carriers are way over here, and you got to find your way home. It's
Yeah. Talk about the cover of the book that you did for the Midway
Oh
battle.
yeah, Kevin Miller wrote the Silver Waterfall. He's a former Navy captain and Thousand Traps and all that, and squadron commander. And he contacted me, I guess right before COVID hit, and I guess it was. And he told me he's writing this novel, his fourth novel, and he's doing historical fiction about the Battle of Midway. And so we talked on the phone a lot, and I tried to figure out, okay, what's gonna, my limit is the format of the book, and he gave me the size of that, and so we figured a lot of the paintings of Midway action are, and they should be, I guess, they're behind the diving airplane, and they show the Japanese carrier down there, and that's a very dynamic thing. Well, I said, well, what if I move the camera using my skills and perspective or whatever, not needing a photograph? Let me move the camera, the viewer's eye, in front of the airplane and show looking up at the three that are diving down. And Kevin had told me that Dick Best on this particular dive had released his bomb a little bit, not a little bit past the recommended altitude, just to guarantee a hit. So if you look at the book cover, you see the number two, his bomb is already dropped, and the trapeze that holds it has gone up. And Dick Best's bomb has just come out, and the trapeze is on its way up. And so they gave it to a book designer, and he did the format with the text and all that. And it came out really well, I think.
Oh, it is. It's an
And the book
incredible
is good
painting.
too. Yeah.
Well, and it's, it's like you said, you as an artist are able to really look at an event like that from 360-degree bubble. Seriously,
Well,
you know?
it's funny what I did because I knew it was going to be on the book, and Kevin's, very accurate on his descriptions. So I took that model, and I think I have it on my Facebook page. I have the whole story of how, from day one, how I did the painting with images. And I figured out when they did it, where the sun would be in relation and what dive angle, because I think they had the reports, what, they were heading 120 degrees or whatever. And I figured out where the sun was going to be. And I put my model on a tripod. And so the sun was hitting it approximately where it would have been hitting the real aircraft diving.
Mhm.
Now, of course, there's a lot of, Kentucky windage going on. And I got on the ground looking up at my aircraft and took a picture. And I think I have that on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
And then the same process. I take that rough image of a model, for the three. I did it for the three aircraft. And then, I do a refined drawing, a line drawing. Then I do figure out where the sun is going to be, from those photographs. And I do a drawing, black and white drawing of that, then the painting and, an underpainting, then the color. And it came out well, I think. It looks good on the book.
Oh, it does. It looks fabulous, man. And what an incredible story, Dick Best. And, of course, there's a movie that came out, what was it, 2 years ago now
Yeah.
that highlight him,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Same guy. Yeah.
Yeah, drops on two carriers in the same day, gets hits on two carriers the same day. I mean, the whole story of Midway is just freaking incredible.
It gets back to that, flying around and McCluskey, should have turned back, but he had this feeling or whatever. We've just got to find these ships where the carriers are, and they saw the destroyer, which had been behind, and it looked like he was going real fast, and kind of figured out that guy's going somewhere real fast, probably back to the fleet, which is exactly what happened. And just it's amazing out in the middle of the ocean, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And they take out four of the six carriers that were involved in Pearl Harbor.
Well, that
Three of
was
it.
As you know, that was the turning point. We were
It really
offensive.
was. It
We
really
were
was.
offensive after that. The whole war, we were offensive. Took a while, but from that point on, the Japanese were on the defensive
Yeah,
after Midway.
yeah. And three of the carriers are hit like within 5 minutes. And of course, Nagumo made that big mistake of swapping out armament.
Yeah,
Oh, we got to
it's
do this
funny
now.
to read about that, and you see the Charlton Heston movie about that, and they're
Yeah,
like, "What? Okay, what do we do?" Oh no,
yeah,
take them back off. Take them back off.
yeah. And see, he was a surface warfare guy. He didn't understand airplanes. You know, I say that having done a lot of my master's degree is in air warfare, and of course, I did a whole paper just on the Battle of Midway because it was the turning point in the Pacific. It really was. I mean, that was the proverbial punch to the gut for the Japanese Navy when
It was.
for
They realized,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yamamoto realized, oh, the dragon's awake now. That
well, he
famous
knew it.
quote.
I think he knew it. He knew it.
Well, and because he'd spent so much time in the States, he understood how we think, you
Mhm.
know, he spoke really good English,
Yeah.
because he'd spent so
Educated.
much
Yeah.
time. He's very educated, yeah, and spent so much time in the States and everything. People don't realize
Yeah. Oh,
that
he
he understood the American psyche better than anybody there. And he knew when he got that report, three of my carriers are on fire, that
that was it.
things, yeah, the dragon's awake now.
I
You
think
know,
he said after Pearl Harbor, I can, or before Pearl Harbor when they were planning, he said, I'll give you 6 months, I think is what he said. And after that,
yeah,
no
yeah, and
guarantees
that was almost spot on,
with Midway. Yeah.
from Midway, because Midway was
Yeah.
June,
Hmm.
December 1941, and here it is,
Yeah.
June of 42, and sure enough, 6 months later, man, and then he only lives another year. He
Yeah.
gets shot down
He
the
was
following year.
killed on the 1 year anniversary of the Doolittle raid.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
And
that was a remarkable mission too. The flying the P-38s that far, and the timing was perfect to find them. Yeah.
yeah, uh, when I was a kid, I read the book called Get Yamamoto, which goes through the whole thing, you know. And of
Hmm.
course, uh, the whole controversy, who shot him down, Barber or the other guy. I can't remember the other guy's name.
Lanfear or something like that.
Lanfear, Bob Lanfear, Rex Barber. Yeah, I got him. No, I got him. No, I got him. No, I got him. Who cares?
They
You know,
should have, yeah, that was a bone of contention for, I think, a
a
while,
long
because
time.
with the Fighter Aces Association, and they got involved, and
Hmm.
and then they, of course, as you know, they went back later when they found the Betty in the jungle. They figured out where the bullet came from, and it had to, based on their reports, it had to have been from the, I guess, the right side or whatever, and
Yeah,
that would have been Rex Barber's position. And then Barber, when they came back, he was like, I don't care, we got him. Doesn't matter who gets it. We all shot at him,
yeah,
and
yeah.
but
You've done some beautiful 38 prints, P-38s. Another one of my favorite airplanes. You know,
yeah, it's such a beautiful airplane, Kelly
yeah,
Johnson.
yeah.
And it's, the Mustangs and Corsairs are kind of my bread and butter.
Mhm.
And I do, my wish list, I've always got a wish list of about 10 at the top there, and it's P-38 stuff is more what I want to do.
Okay, so tell us what's on your list.
Well, I've got a big old list. Right now, what we're doing is, of course, I'm finishing the Flatley. I've got
Hmm.
another B-24 for a commission that I'm working on. And then I've been doing a lot of work with Vector Fine Art in England.
Hmm.
Colin Smith owns that business, he and his wife, and they, for years, were getting all, when the pilots, the British pilots mainly, and some American, were, they had them sign a bunch of pictures, like A3 and A4 size pictures, and papers, and they signed on the bottom, so there's room for a drawing up there. And if I've been doing that for a couple of years now. We've got a lot more we're doing in the spring for the show next year in September, the Battle of Britain show at Duxford, and I'll be there actually for that one. Go back to England, but that's after I finish this painting and the B-24. That's all, pretty much all I'm going to be doing is a painting for Vector, which of a Battle of Britain scene, and then all those papers that with drawings. And we've got some very famous. Every time I give out like an idea of who it is, that Colin slaps me virtually over the, don't tell anybody. But there's some very, very famous. I don't know why, it's just me. I'd be like, hey, this is what I got, start. And but it's some very famous people, very well-known famous people that he's had signatures, and I've got all the papers here, behind my easel, just waiting, and he'll say, okay, we've already mocked up about 15 of them
Yeah.
for next September. So that's all I'll be doing in next year up till like
Mhm.
August. And then I've just got some older commissions that are way overdue, and just I
How
need
long
some,
does it
I need
take
to,
you to, and I know it differs from project to project, but on average, how long does it take you to do one of your custom uh, pieces of art?
paintings, like a big painting like this one. I don't really work on them, you know, back, full time, start one day and then 6 weeks later it's done. That would probably be about right, a month and a half maybe, if that's all I did, 8 hours a day. But like I said, some of that descriptive geometry and stuff is very, it gives me there's not a lot of satisfaction. It's just hard work getting the plotting the points and drawing the outline. So I'll do that, and then I'll take a break. I'll do a drawing for Colin at Vector, I'll do that, or then I'll start mocking up a, a Mustang fantasy painting, or the moon painting. I'll start doing a little bit on that. Back when I was doing that, so I kind of break it up. So it's really hard to tell, like if it was an Air Force project, give us the exact hours and budget, and all this. I just say, well, I can start on it like now. If somebody asks me about a commission, I say, well, I can start on it in about a year, and maybe take about 3 or 4 months after that, because oil paint has to dry and has to varnish it. And if they want me to frame it, I've got to get with my framer, who's really good, but he takes a while. He's like me; he's very slow. but the results are worth it. And so
Yeah.
I've got a board over here with all my wish list basically of paid for or in progress stuff, and it's just full. I look at it and I go, oh my God, I need some help. But I'm definitely not like a lot of writers, another creative pursuit, like you've written the book. It's hard work, and
Yeah.
you're looking for it. It takes a while to do everything. It just doesn't happen quickly.
Yeah.
And so I try to vary it. I'll go, oh, I don't really feel like mixing paint today, so I'll work on a mock-up for Colin, or I'll work on this Mustang Dream painting that I've been wanting to do for years that nobody's buying, but I just want to do it, and maybe somebody will buy it. But I'll start mocking up that. So I've really my desktop on my computer is just filled with folder. I call them project folders, and in there, like, or I might research. Like if I've got like an hour before I have to go somewhere and time to kill, I'll come up to my studio here and I'll just start researching like a tomcat. When I was doing that, I'll start researching tomcat pictures that are similar to the final projection I did, and lighting, get an idea of the lighting, because I don't have a model to take outside of the tomcat, so I have to kind of look at pictures that are roughly the same, and I'll none of them, of course, are exactly what I need, so I have to get on that drawing again, the concept drawing, which is on my site for this one, and I just start figuring it out. Okay, well, like Keith Ferris taught us, here's how the reflections go. If you got a bunch of white clouds below you, it's going to be lit on the bottom of the. So I just figure all that out in the drawing. But I'm always trying to do something. I've got to answer your question. My wish list is everything, and I get people, why haven't you done a B-26 Marauder? Great airplane, did a lot of good work. But I was going, well, if I did it, it would be on spec, and but you can commission one, and that's the way to get it done a lot faster.
Yeah. A lot
But so I
faster.
mean, literally, I want to do everything. Just there's
Yeah.
so much I want to do. Yeah.
And I'm the same way, Wade. Okay. In my little profile drawing. And here's a really crazy story. All right. I, I told you, I had two friends that really taught me how to do this. Okay. One does aftermarket decals, and the other guy was an artist for aftermarket decal folks. All right. And I remember the first time I did it, Adobe Illustrator, man, it looked terrible. You know, I look back at some of the things that we did like 2 years ago, and I think, I can't believe I sold that to somebody compared to what we do now. All right.
Yeah.
But and it's like you say, you go to your mentors, and they help you along and everything like that.
You've got to.
And I came across on vector stock this gentleman who does, and he's prolific at this, just line profile drawings. That's all he does. All right. Everything from the Airbus Beluga, that has the whole top open up and takes outsized cargo,
Yeah.
to BF 109 E7s. And so I started downloading those and using and filling those in and everything, and I finally got a hold of him. And here's the crazy part of the story. He was in the Ukraine army fighting over in Russia and got
Oh my
hurt really
gosh.
bad. And so they medically retired
Wow.
him. And now he just does these kind of drawings kind of on the side. All right. And they're really good. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, they're about an 80% solution. And he sent me a KC-46,
Hmm.
and I had to do a keynote speech up at Portsmouth, where the New Hampshire Air National Guard has that beautiful airplane they call Peggy, with the waving flag and the Minuteman on the tail and everything. I know Shane Meter, the gal that actually painted the tail and everything too.
Wow.
And I sent it back to him. All right. He goes, man, this is incredible, And I said, dude, this is what I do with these line drawings, This is how I do this,
Yeah.
and everything. And um you were talking a little while ago about, your line drawings. If you can get that right, everything else kind of falls in. And I realize exactly what you're saying, you know.
You got to
If you get
start with the accurate shape,
mm-hmm.
and then go from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then
And
then you put on your artist beret and do the lighting and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, uh, and this is another question I wanted to ask you. Okay. The Luftwaffe 7475 RLM 747576. I've done that ME 109, here, like I showed you, okay. One of my stickers, like I showed you, okay.
Yeah.
That took me forever.
Yeah, there's nothing more complex than the Luftwaffe camouflage and they have entire books that are written like doctoral dissertations on, spectral analysis of black and white pictures. And, I've done a few Luftwaffe things and it's, I make sure thank God for the internet because you can research like an FW 190 or something and okay, I'm going to do this plane and they've probably done a model of it or,
Mhm.
some profiles. So I can just stick with that. But it's a complex subject. I mean, and because they're ad hoc, cannons here, rocket tubes here, and that wasn't necessarily a production thing,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you've got
This is
to
stuff we're
nail
adding
down.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's pretty complex, it's kind of it's a whole subset of aviation, modeling and history and to get it right, because if you get it wrong, they're, no matter what it is, they're going to let you know,
Yeah.
and you did this. I had did that Chico, that F4, and I was invited. I forgot why I was invited, but I was invited by this traveling tourism bureau to go to some show like things to see in Alabama or whatever. And I had my prints there, and some guy walks over and goes, your nose, your gun, which is the Midas 4 gun gas diffuser on the bottom of the
Yeah.
nose, which is
Yeah.
the
The
newer
long
one.
nose, the long
Yeah,
gun.
to get the gun gas away. And he said that's not accurate. That's of course I didn't have any pictures with me, and I said, well, that's the Midas 4 gun gas diffusion. I quoted the, the research, and the early one was shorter, but I guess
Hmm.
they had problems with the gun gas getting in the cockpit, and they
Yeah.
figured this out, the Midas 4. And I said, well, that's what it looked like. He goes, no, I mean they're sitting there. You figure I'm doing this painting. You think I have done a little research. I didn't just copy some picture.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually have researched every square inch of that thing, and along with the technical, and as I was researching, of course, I realized, oh, there was two types of gun gas diffusers where the 20 millimeter cannon came out, internal cannon, and so I put that on there because that's what Colonel Pewett's photograph showed that it had the newer one, and I mean, he's looking right now, yeah, it's incorrect. He was an older guy. It wasn't a modeling show or anything, where
Yeah.
those guys will say, you got two rivets out of place.
Yeah.
He was just some guy. I guess he served in Vietnam or something. He goes, ah, they never had those. That's incorrect. I mean, they're looking you right in the face, telling you that's wrong. And of course, now you can get on the internet and look it up.
Oh, yeah.
I could have looked up Midas 4. I'm just
Yeah.
showing him a picture. But it's funny, that they like the Luftwaffe. I always, when I do my research, the first step is, all the research. I mean, I got piles of books. I write notes, like I'm a doctor writing a chart, because like I said, I might do something else for a while and I'll come back to it and I'll forget what did I say? What did I decide the markings were for that B-17? So I have everything written down. And I always say, well, maybe might not be 100% accurate if you would go back in time and look at this exact plane, but at least I have a reason for making those choices. And here's the
Yeah.
reason. Here's these three books that say it was yellow on the tail and this book or whatever, so I don't just make stuff up. Like Keith Ferris would say, he doesn't add detail on a plane for detail's sake. He adds it if he needs it, or if a person 100 feet away would be able to actually see it. You're not going to see flush rivets on a plane 100 feet away, so you just don't put them on. you know. And maybe if you're doing a model box top where the modelers want to see all that detail, because it makes them want to buy the kit. But in real life, you have to look at this window here that I'm looking through to see this scene.
Yeah.
I mean, that jet, might be 200 feet away or whatever, or 100 feet away. I mean, there's some things you're not going to be able to see unless you're Clark Kent.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
so you kind of add that atmospheric layers in there, and as far as the visual part, but the accuracy, every decision I make, I have a reason for it. Maybe this highly regarded book, maybe it's wrong, but that's the one I used. And so at least I have something I can point at and say, well, you know. But my question is always, what do you think about the painting?
Yeah.
They won't say anything about the painting, but
Yeah.
the people visit the house and they go, "Oh, that's a nice painting. How long did that take you?" It's the first two things everybody says. How long did that take you?
Yeah.
And the same thing. Well, I don't know. It took a while, but nobody says, "Oh, just like the moon painting." They don't say, "Oh, the astronaut doesn't have the right ALQ, you know, TLS, life
Yeah.
support system or whatever."
Yeah. Yeah.
But the aviation it's a challenge for historical aviation artists or any uh, transportation, rail or marine, where people who love that subject will be the ones, most of the people looking at it. And they don't care if, oh, you've got great atmospheric recession and detail, tonal recession. That sail is wrong, or whatever, if it's a marine painting.
Yeah.
And so we have to learn how any serious aviation artist, especially, is going to have to learn how to paint a scene, say without the aircraft, and then integrate the aircraft into that scene to where it looks like it was maybe copied from a photo, which like this one, there's no way it could have been copied from a photo because that scene never happened.
Yeah.
And so we have to learn the rules of art and we have to please our crowd, like I said, of the people who are, they know this and, they know the subject, or maybe in the case of the F4, maybe they don't know the subject as good as they thought they did. So I have to be able to explain to them the accuracy and then the historical reason I put this. And then the art, like I've entered like some contests online of just artists, who might paint Indians or landscapes. And they don't look at the aircraft because they don't know anything about aircraft, but they like the art.
Yeah.
And that's probably I got a handle on the history, but the ones I really want to please at this point are the fellow artists who know nothing about airplanes. That's a nice painting way. That's what I want to hear,
Yeah.
and that's what I shoot for anyway.
That. So there's um one Focke-Wulf 190 you've done on the ground and in the air with the checkerboard nose, and I don't know the
Oh
unit
yeah,
it's from.
JG1. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how uh you researched that one, because that the JG1 had like I said, the checkerboard like the 78th Fighter Group, but it had that same Luftwaffe paint scheme, RLM 747576, and it just makes a really stark um airplane.
Well,
And you
it's so
painted it on the
attractive.
ground
Yeah.
and you painted it in the air.
Yeah, that one, it's like I said, it's Luftwaffe. It's challenging, more challenging than like a Mustang, where it's pretty easy to know what the colors were. But the Germans, you've got that, the fanatics out there. They don't care what the painting, how beautiful. If Norman Rockwell painted it, they don't care. It's just Balkan Cruise is 1 inch off, or whatever. So I just did the research. I have a bunch of Luftwaffe books and got, we have a history degree, so I'm familiar with getting the books out and just digging out page by page of reading a story or about the pilot, or what when certain marks of aircraft came into service. So you have to get that timeline going. And then there's a lot of course, the modelers, which is a great resource for aviation artists because they're real, they're focused on the markings, so all that I love that because the scale modelers have been the reason all these good books have been done was for the markings get the aircraft right. So I'll go to the scale model resources. I might buy some decals. Even though I don't build a model, I'll use what they say the markings should be in the colors. And then I'll, start the same thing like that. The FW190s on the ground, that was a big 30-second scale model that I took a picture of, the closer one, and the one further, I just moved the same model back and kept the camera locked down and took the second picture. So now I got two FW190s, and it's the same thing. I do a line drawing from those photos, then figure out where the shadows are, and then I paint it. But the one on the aerial one, um, he was attacking bombers, and he ended up bailing out, and they found him. He didn't survive. He washed up on some island somewhere in northern Germany,
Mm.
and just research the markings and like to know a little bit about the person, the pilot, what their story was, and I think it adds a little intrinsic value,
Oh yeah.
when the background, you can see it from all sides. You're not just painting just the plane. I want to know about the man, if I can, the unit, where they were, what kind of conditions they were under. And of course, I said the scale modeling resources for the markings, which makes it really easy for the Luftwaffe stuff. And I always say, well, if the Luftwaffe, like I said, it's pretty complex, but I go, well, if I don't get it right, I use this very highly regarded decal sheet, and they said to use that color and put the number at this position and whatever. So so I have backup. I know
Yeah.
I
Oh
have
yeah.
the
Yeah.
historical backup, and it was just a matter of doing a drawing or maybe a couple drawings, maybe just the airplane itself, and then the whole scene where the airplane the concept drawing is not as detailed because I've already done that separately. So I just figure out where my lights and darks of the clouds are going to be, and next thing you know, there's the painting. But I don't do as many Luftwaffe because Facebook and the online people, they'll ding you,
Oh, they
if you.
critique the heck out of you, don't they?
Well, I mean, no, I'm not talking about historically. I'm talking about like Facebook itself. They see
Yeah.
the swastika, and oh my
Oh,
God, you're promoting hate, and
oh
oh, it's
yeah. I
bad.
forgot about that. I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
and so I have to be
Yeah.
really careful,
Yeah.
even though I do
Yeah.
have some online that I guess have escaped the AI robots.
Well, and even in the model world, you'll see like Hasegawa will do a Focke-Wulf 190, and they'll have like a diamond where the swastika goes on the tail. They don't have the real swastika.
I think it's
There's,
maybe in Germany they can't sell it or something, or
yeah,
some countries won't allow. I mean,
probably.
just it's just a
Yeah.
symbol, it's historical symbol.
Yeah. And that's the way I look at it too. It's just a historical symbol. Excuse me.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's a bad time period, but I'm sorry it happened, you know,
Yeah,
and
you can't hide from history, even though it
no.
was,
Mm-mm.
and you're not promoting it. You're not saying that's great, and
Yeah.
I don't have a big swastika hanging up back here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just history, and
It's just history. Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. You said something funny about model airplane decals. I'm going to grab something really quick. I want to show you. Okay. When you
Okay,
talk about
sure.
decals, hang on just a
All
second.
right. I like those challenge coins back there.
So, Wade, how many model airplane decal sheets do you have?
I'm looking up I probably got about 100. They're probably worth something by now. Some of them are old. Oh my gosh. I don't
Look at
have
it.
that many.
There's probably about 500 sheets in here. Okay. You know,
Yeah, you just use it for research, huh? Yeah.
well, and like I mentioned to you, the gentleman that I do the wall pilot stuff with, he owns Bullseye Model Aviation, Scott Brown, very dear
Ah,
friend of mine. Okay. And so I will do some of the drawings with the weapons on them and everything that he puts in the
okay.
decal sheets. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But you talk about doing research, and there's a classic example.
Hmm.
And you're right. Using that decal sheet is what I did. One of my
Sure. I do the same
one of
thing.
mine for the
Exact
Battle of
same thing.
Britain. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was just interesting when you said that. I said, "Oh, good. I'm doing it right then." Wade does it, that I'm doing it right.
Well, there's not a lot of other resources. I haven't with the internet, I probably haven't purchased a book online in a while because I have a lot. I've been collecting my whole life. And but now, like the Tomcat, I had some Tomcat books. I got a big old stack of them on the other side of the Mac here.
Mhm.
But so I go through my Navy stuff, get all my Hornet, my Tomcat, my Hellcat, F4 books out, go through those, and then whatever is not in those books, Google, and
Oh yeah.
image searches, and the Tomcat, the VF-154. I just, what were their loadouts? What kind of, they carried the Sidewinders, the Sparrows, or that carry the bombs, the Bombcat. What did those racks look like? So I'm just getting into, and I always allow, like, in my research, about a week. I don't want to put too much pressure on myself to. So I'm just every day I'm coming up here, instead of painting, I'm looking Tomcat black nights, just to find some secret picture that I haven't seen before. And then I put all that in a project folder on my desktop. And so when I'm working on the Hellcat or the Tomcat or whatever, I open all those pictures up and go, okay, the tail. Now I'm working on the tail. What is that? I get all my tail pictures out, put them on
Mhm.
my iPad and have it right next to me as I'm working. And it's a slow process, but the internet helps. The decal sheets are wonderful, especially the more recent ones, from
Mhm.
maybe 20 years ago, or they're all good,
Yeah.
most of them. And they're reputable, well-known
Yeah.
companies that the stuff is right because they're
Yeah.
still in business. So that saves a lot of time, and especially for the unusual stuff. I was commissioned by an Air Force officer who was stationed in Italy, and he said, I want to look out of here's my picture of my view, whatever villa in Naples or whatever, and I want the Italian jet team to be flying for me right outside my window. And I think that's on my website.
Yeah,
And he
it is.
gave me the Italian saying or whatever, so that's the title. And so I
Yeah.
had to use descriptive geometry and put the six jets um, in formation right outside his window over this bay, and of course, send him the picture, the
Yeah.
final painting. So he's got that
Yeah.
somewhere. But that's what he wanted. He said, "I love my villa. I love the view of this bay, whatever it was." And I want the Freche Tricolore, whatever, flying right
Yeah.
outside,
Yeah.
smoke on and all six jets or whatever it was. And that was fun, because you make those moments happen. Because there's no way he could probably have seen the jet team.
Mhm.
He had obviously seen the bay, but to put the team where he wanted them, a good view flying right by just for him, that's the magic of aviation art, of
Yeah.
historical art.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, brother, we've been going 2 hours.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Oh man. And you know what? You and I could probably go for another 2 hours too, but
Mhm.
uh
Like
I know you've
minds.
got things to do and I got things to do too. Other things I got to do. But
Yeah.
Wade, thank you so much
Well,
for
thank you
being
for
on the
inviting
lessons.
me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Oh, there was one question I wanted to ask. I just remembered it. And this may take a little while to understand.
Sure.
You talked about, the different airplanes that you've done and everything. If you were to tell me what are your top five airplanes, Wade Meyers, what are they?
Well, I actually have a list. I've always had. Number one is the Mustang.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, the Corsair.
Mm-hmm.
Number three, F-86. And
Ah,
after that, yeah, I love that. Back in fourth grade, we were moving from, or fifth grade, we were moving from North Carolina to Barksdale, and it was in the middle of fifth grade. And I remember our teacher said, because I love to read, and she knew I loved to read, she said, Wade, you can take one book with you from our, in class library here. And it was Sabre Jet Ace about Joe McConnell, Korean War Triple Ace,
yeah,
16 victories.
yeah.
And it's a book called Sabre Jet Ace, written for kids, and I've still got it somewhere up there. And so Joe McConnell was a big hero of mine. I've always loved the F-86, and I've never done a painting.
Interesting. You
That's
never
you're
done a
talking about
painting.
wish list. You're talking about wish lists.
Yeah.
Joe McConnell's F-86 is on my list, and after that, it really, I love the B-17, and P-47. After that, it kind of depends on. I was on a TV show one time. I interviewed me and Russell Smith, a friend of mine, another artist. We were getting ready for a show, and this local TV station asked us, what is your favorite painting? And the same with favorite aircraft after those three. It's whatever I'm working on now. That's or the next one, because I get all excited like this one, I'm all excited about Hellcats and Tomcats and Hornets and F4s and naval aviation. And after this, I go back in time, back to like like I mentioned, the B-24, working on B-24 painting, another favorite airplane. And so you get to hopscotch through history,
Yeah.
doing this, and I love the research part of it. So I'm learning about the plane, the crews, that particular crew for that particular son. Like the B-24 is for his dad was a waist gunner, I think, on the bomber. that I'm going to depict. And he, of course, sends me all these pictures that have never been published. So, like a lot of them, it's the first time that aircraft has been seen in art, and the photographs have never been seen because the pictures are just of from in the family, and maybe the crew. But so after those three, the Mustang, Corsair, and F-86, it depends on what I'm working on, or I might watch a TV show on Netflix, and they might have a you know, P-38 or something. And oh man, I just get all fired up about P-38s. And, I wish it takes so long to do this that I wish I could just snap my fingers and have that image, but I've got these little images in my head,
Yeah.
like I get all excited about P-38 and then somebody says, well, that's great, but I want you to do my, a B-17 of my grandfather. And so now I'm all excited about B-17s,
Mhm.
And but the first three, that's definitely the Mustang, Corsair, and
Yeah.
F-86.
Yeah. And see, people always ask me that, Mark, what are your favorite airplanes? Okay. And I say, look, I have to go by time period. Okay. Because I,
That's a good way to look at it.
I couldn't do, here are my top five. All right. I probably could if I sat down and actually thought about it, but P-51, I think, is on everybody's list because it's just such an iconic airplane, has such an iconic sound to it too, such a unique sound of that Merlin engine.
Hmm.
All right.
Hmm.
Um, F-86 is also one of mine. All right. Um, I'm going to depart here a little bit. Okay. P-61 Black Widow
Yeah.
has always been an extremely fascinating airplane to me. And I think not Fantasy of Flight, Planes of Fame Museum
One
down in
museum
Chino
has got one going. Yeah.
has got one going. Okay.
It
And
might even be nearing flight now. It's been a couple of years, I think, since I saw updates on it.
can you imagine seeing one of those in the air? You
Two
know,
2800s.
yeah, those
And
big monster radial, that thing was fast.
and one pilot flying it. Of course, there's a gunner, radar
Hmm.
officer, but
Yeah.
that big giant airplane.
Yeah. And, people don't realize it was a big airplane. It really was.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I may be at Planes of Fame in the spring. And that's one of the planes I'm really, really anxious to
Oh, that
see.
would be
Okay.
nice. Yeah, that would be great to see that thing flying.
Yeah. If I get down there, I'll take plenty of pictures for you all the way around. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'll take pictures of every rivet and panel line for you, brother. Okay.
Well, a good thing, yeah, I appreciate it because these days when they do the restorations, they are like perfect factory, down to the stamps,
Yeah.
inspector stamps on the inside of the
Oh, yeah.
aluminum, and
Yeah. And the
and that's
stenciling,
great. That's the way it
everything.
should be. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Um,
Mhm.
number four, F-15, probably because I've flown in it, obviously, my all-time favorite will always be a KC-135 707. That's, you know, but yeah,
You know which one I really like, but when I was in the Air Force Reserve, it was an A-10 unit at Barksdale,
yeah.
and a couple of our pilots went off to another guard, reserve unit flying F-16s. And I was an enlisted guy, and they came back one time, brought their F-16s, and they said, Sergeant Meyers, can you bring us out to the jets? Sure, yes, sir. They knew I loved airplanes and
Yeah.
stuff. And so I'm sitting there driving in this Air Force truck on the flight line. I've got two pilots with all their gear on, G suits and everything.
Yeah.
And one of the captains was pretty good friends with, even though he was an officer and I was enlisted. His reserves.
Yeah.
So I asked him. I said, "Is there any way I can sit in the car?" Oh yeah, go up there. So he's doing his walk around. I'm in the cockpit, sitting
Oh,
there, and that is the most comfortable airplane. I said, "Man,
yeah.
I missed maybe Art's great, but man, I'd love to be flying this thing." And I look over, and his wingman's already getting in his jet, and I'm going, This is as close as I'm gonna get right here." I got my wingman getting in his jet, and I'm in this one. Man, I had to get out. But I mean, the visual, the nose goes away from you, and I couldn't imagine what it'd be like flying that thing. And I love the F-15 too because I sat in one at an air show, and you're just like sitting so high
Hmm.
and the canopy seal's way down here, and I'm going, man, this thing must have been something in dogfighting because you just got such a great view, and you're
I've
sitting
got,
up high, and it's such a beautiful. I did the pressing west at Frisco that jet, and And the first painting I did, Spirit of the Shogun, with the 18th TAC fighter wing at Kadena. That was an F-15. I think that's the only two F-15s I've done. But it's, as far as visual, such a beautiful airplane. The
Yeah.
lines, it's like the Mustang. Every line is perfect. You just can't change anything.
No, well, I've got 3 rides in the backseat of an F-15D model.
That's on my
Okay.
list. Got to get some
Um,
friends in the community.
the first one was with a very dear friend of mine from college. Okay. He and I had both gone to Brigham Young University. We'd both been in the ROTC unit there. Okay.
Hmm.
And so my first ride was with Haas Kindred. All right. Um, little did we know that Haas would get killed a couple years later in a
Oh,
midair collision while we were at
mm,
Okinawa. Yeah. And he had been our LDS uh, leader there. Okay. Our branch president too. Just wonderful, wonderful guy. So my first
mm.
ride was with him. Okay. My second F-15 ride was with Elwood Amadon, Mark Amadon, and it was about a 3 hour flight
Oh, wow.
over Alaska for Cope Thunder, Alaska.
Mm.
And I remember, and you talk about sitting up high and you're on top of the world.
In the back seat, are you up high like that? Is
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I put
Oh,
the seat
wow.
up. I put the seat up. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And so I had about this much space on the top, you
Uh-huh.
know. Um, and you're right, man. It's this view of the world that is just incredible. And obviously, you know, being on the tanker was kind of emotional for me, to tell you the
Oh,
truth.
wow. Really?
To
Yeah.
see it, yeah, to see air refueling from another airplane for the first time. And I'll send you that picture because it's the cover of my book. All
Okay.
right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
All right. And then my very last ride, I have another picture again from the back seat where we're coming up to the boom. And there's the hand of the pilot in the front seat, and he's adjusting his mirror. He's now the 4-star general who leads Air Combat Command, Cruiser
Ooh,
Wilsbach, Ken Wilsbach.
wow.
Okay. And like you said, it's this incredible bubble canopy and this view of the world
Mm.
in an environment that's pretty violent. Okay. Cruiser almost put me to sleep at 8.2 Gs. Okay. And he said, hang on, Sluggo. And of course, you're behind already. And he went right to 8.2 Gs, and I'm like in the back seat. Um, but of course, the other thing about the F-15 is 104-0.
That's right. Yeah.
It's never been shot down.
Air superiority.
Air superiority at its finest.
Mm.
Okay. And when you understand, you've been in the airplane and you see the actual avionics and the sensors and how they work together and everything like that. I remember coming down thinking to myself, who wants to mess with us when we've got this? You know?
I had speaking of that, did some work for some paintings for a couple squadrons at Moody when the IFF guys were there. And I got two AT-38 rides.
Oh,
One of them was just acro. We went out for about an hour, and the second one was actually dogfighting. And somewhere on YouTube, I've got the gun. They gave me the HUD camera film of that on the little cassettes, and I had it transferred. It's on to digital, and it's on YouTube somewhere with all the voice. But my second pilot was he was an instructor there, but his real job was an F-15E pilot. And of course, he's, after the mission, the 38 was limited to 6 Gs, and that was a lot, if you're not
yeah,
used to it,
yeah,
if you're not used to it. And but after the second ride, I was better prepared, hydrate, don't be, they told me don't be looking down, I'm always looking up, so I had the techniques down. And the pilot came back and we said, "You have fun," we watched the HUD tape and stuff because it was an actual syllabus mission for the students. So we had other planes we were dogfighting. And he said, "What'd you think?" And of course, I said, "Oh, it's awesome." He said, "Man," he said, "Have you gotten a ride in a fighter yet? 15 or so." I go, "Not yet." And he said, "This 38, this ain't nothing compared to the fighters." And I'm like, it was enough for me. It was a lot. I mean, not enough. It was a lot for
yeah,
me because I'm a civilian pilot, And he said, "Oh man, you ever get a ride if you get the opportunity, don't pass it up." And he said, "What we tell people, even flying in the 38s, the VIPs and stuff." He said, "Don't." He said, "We tell them if you get sick," which I didn't embarrass myself. He said, "If you get sick, just take the bag out, barf, and just keep enjoying it because look where you are, you know. And I did get a little lightheaded the first time, and but the second time they said, you know, they told me that taught me I actually did the G strain properly, and they did, you know, they said hydrate, and don't look around, don't look down, and I did fine that second time. But
Uh,
and I can imagine based on that on the T-38, which is a cool jet, you
yeah.
know, and you're wearing a G suit and all that, and helmet and all that. I mean, I was sweating and just, you know, and it was in February, it was cold, but you know, you're doing all that maneuvering, but I couldn't imagine the fighters.
No, it was one of the most amazing things, you know, and then um you know, to be up in the air, you know, you're not very long. Well, you know, we were fueled on the last two with Elwood
Hmm.
over Alaska, and then with Cruiser, you know, we hit the tanker, you know, and filled back
Hmm.
up and everything. And yeah, it was just an incredible that's one of those images that I'll go to my grave with, you know, flying
Wow.
around doing that kind of stuff
Three flights in the
in a F-15.
F-15.
And then I got 10 cats and traps on 8 aircraft
Oh,
carriers.
really? What kind of
Yeah.
plane?
I was in the COD, and then, believe it or not, when we were deployed, S3 Viking,
Wow.
an S3
Jeez.
Viking ride. Okay. And the S3 Viking is fully aerobatic. You know, we were upside down, you know, heading around, doing all
Wow.
kinds of crazy stuff, you know. And of course, just being on a carrier deck is just amazing,
I'll
you
bet.
know. And the F-14 is one of my is in my top five too. I have the F-15 and the
Wow.
F-14 because they were such incredible airplanes. The
Hmm.
As you know, the paint scheme that you're doing 154, the Black Knights. See, they were
Hmm.
stationed in Japan for a long time, CAG 5.
Hmm.
And they would
Hmm.
come down to Okinawa, Wade, and do exercises with us where the F-15s would be fighting the 14s, okay? But
Hmm.
you know, the thing was the F-14s was VF-21 and VF-154, all right, the Lancers and the Black Knights, but they had the old engines, okay? And
Hmm.
so the F-15s kind of ate them up, all right, because they're so overpowered, all right?
The A models. Yeah.
Yeah, the A models, they had the old A models, okay? But it was such an incredible thing to see them. And you had mentioned, you know, about the bomb racks and everything.
Hmm.
Both the 154 had just become a bombcat squadron, all right? And to be quite honest, the first
Hmm.
time I saw bombs on a Tomcat, it was unnatural.
Yeah.
All right, it just wasn't natural. But of course, as history proves, more and more, that was
Hmm.
a great bombing airplane, and particularly when it got the targeting pod, the lantern targeting pod, and then JDAM. Um,
Hmm.
but they would come down and fight with us all the time. And
Mm.
any carrier that was going through the Pacific would come to Okinawa because we had two live drop ranges and three F-15 squadrons, an AWAC squadron, a tanker squadron. And so
Yeah. Get some
we
good
divvied it all
dissimilar.
up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The E2 guys would fly with the the AWACS E3 guys, and
Hmm.
the F-14, F-18 guys would fly with the F-15s, and then some of our F-15 guys would go out to the boat and sit in the back seat of the F-14, you know,
Sure.
and fly. It was just like I said, it was a great place to be stationed because I learned so much while I was there.
Oh
So
yeah.
much while I was there.
Working with other services. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we went another half hour. Hey,
That was
brother.
fun. That was fun.
Oh, this has been great to have you on, and I really appreciate you spending time with me and to talk about
Sure.
your aviation art. I'm going to put your website obviously in my description so people can go to it and
Hmm.
and take a look at all that. Hopefully, you'll get some Christmas sales from that and everything.
Yeah,
But
and I want to tell people that if they're interested in the work in progress stuff, you know, the behind the scenes, I have a lot more of that on my Facebook page and Instagram and LinkedIn. I'll put it on LinkedIn too. And
yeah,
that, but the website, I used to have a really cluttered website and I got criticized for that years and, you know, 15, 20 years ago. So when I got my new website about 15 years ago, I said, I'm just going to have a gallery there. I'm just going to have just the finished product. But I found a lot of people do like, you know, how did you do that? Send me, you know, so I'll have albums on Facebook of, you know, the like this stage here, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and so a lot of people find that interesting.
oh,
But that'll be
that
on not be on my website.
yeah, I'll I'll link to I'll have links to Facebook and LinkedIn and your website in the description.
Great.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right, brother. Again, thanks for being on us with me this morning. I
Thank you
really
so much,
appreciate it,
Mark.
man.
I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye.
Wade and I have similar purposes, don't we? He paints people's legacies. I talk about people's legacies. And to me, that is one of the great things about what he and I do. He paints pictures of events, a lot of them from World War II. And I loved hearing about all of these different people that he has met on his aviation and painting journey. I really appreciate him coming on and sharing how he does his artwork, how he does his research, and his love for model planes like me. Go to waltpilot.com and take a look at the 154 ready to print 4, 6, 8 foot prints that you see like here behind me, my KC-135 from Kadena. Also, please subscribe. And I have my Venmo and my PayPal link below if you want to contribute to the show. We also have a Patreon page called the All Ranks Club. So please go by and join the All Ranks Club, because there's something that we're going to offer those of you that become members of the All Ranks Club, particularly those that are in the By the Bar. And here they are. These are stickers that we had made 7 inches long that peel off and go on water bottles or flat surfaces. And like I said, there's 10 of them. So that's the ME-109, F-117, and of course, gotta have a tanker. So go my Patreon page, which I have the link below, and join the All Ranks Club. Membership starts at like $2. And my Discord channel is kind of where I do my aviation blog now too. And it is also called the All Ranks Club. Folks, I appreciate you coming by. We're going to do 2 episodes this week, one today and probably one on Thursday evening or Friday morning with Command Chief Master Sergeant Jamie Newman. And he's going to talk about air-based defense and give us his opinion on these drone things that are going on. And you're going to find this conversation really fascinating because, as you know, several of our bases have been closed down because of drones, and he's going to talk about that. So, appreciate you subscribing. Please go join my All Ranks Club at the Patreon link below, and go by my Discord channel, the All Ranks Club, and join the conversation because there's a lot of memes, stories, lessons learned, and more artwork. Sluggo signing out here. Thanks for joining. Talk to you soon.